I think through the 80s, 90s, we went into a period of time in business in America and around the world where people began to believe that it was no longer possible to be ethical and values driven and be successful and profitable in business. Today, there are organizations that are seen as sort of the champions of this philosophy or disproving this philosophy. Namely organizations like Chick-fil-A.
Right.
But from a values-driven, ethical business model, your father was a pioneer way, way, way before it ever became popular. In fact, right at the heart of when it was unpopular. When did you first realize how important values were to the success of business?
Yeah, he really was ahead of the game there. But he loved studying leadership. And when he studied great leaders, whether they were church leaders or business leaders, what he learned was military leaders, they were clear about their values. And they made the idea of the values present every day in the organization. And they held themselves and the people around them accountable. And that could be the people that worked for them. That could be the people that became the franchisees. That could be the banks that they worked with to help build their businesses. So he got that early on. And his original value statements were, I would say, more beliefs, right? Things like loyalty adds meaning to our lives. The one that I still today, I have to remind myself of is so important is we must re-earn our positions every day in every way. He would say, celebrate the victories of yesterday, but don't gloat over yourself on those. Learn from the mistakes of yesterday, but what are you going to do today to make a difference in the lives of the franchisees, the employees, the customers, at that time, the shareholders that are part of this business? And so that just really, really stuck with me. And when he passed away in 1994, one of the things that we knew, Matthew, that we had to keep front and center in our business was the foundation of the values, because that truly was the foundation to the success of our company, right? Because he held us accountable to his beliefs, his values. But when he died, we're like, okay, he's not here anymore. How do we live the values now when the guy who's held us accountable is no longer here? So again, getting back to what's good about franchising is you take what's working and you systematize it. So we actually got the help of a consulting firm, and they came in and they said, why don't you operationalize the values? Since they really aren't black and white, kind of hard to say, how do you judge somebody's been loyal? Yeah, you and I kind of know how you judge if somebody's been loyal, but it's not really a black and white thing. So we took the original code of values that my father had founded the company on, and we operationalized them into today what we call the Live Rich values. And Rich is the acronym for the 4 core areas of our values: respect, integrity, customer focus, and one of my favorites, having fun in the process. So we took those and we added additional values, or you might call them accountability statements, below each one of those core areas. And every meeting of 3 or more team members, this is one of the systems we created. Let's keep it simple. Every time 3 or more of us meet, let's slow down. It's like a prayer before a meeting, right? But we can't always pray in corporate America. So it's that deep breath before a meeting, and we live our code of values by treating others as we'd like to be treated. We live our code of values by, in our case, in the trades businesses, speaking calmly and respectfully without profanity or sarcasm. Customers don't want to hear our text cussing. So we had very specific, again, I call them values, but you might see them as accountability statements that we trained ourselves to live by. So when you ran into a tough situation, my goal is for people to know the values by heart, with heart. So you're running into a tough situation in business or maybe even at home. What are the values? Which values do you need to apply to the situation? And man, it just became so natural to just look to the values for the solutions.
Yeah. Do you find that the values drove clarity around decision making at every level in the organization?
I would say yes, even the toughest, and especially the toughest decisions. Yeah, I think you and I shared a situation I went through in a challenging time in the growth of our business, where we were in a mediation, and the franchisee was accusing us of not living up to 3 of our core values. And people will do that; they'll attack you, right?
Sure.
You try to do what's good and right, and unfortunately, people will attack you. There's a Mother Teresa. It's not I guess it is a poem. It's not between you and them anyway. It's a wonderful poem for people to go find. But they will attack you, and he was attacking us. But the truth is, there were 2 of the values we had not completely lived up to, And I told our attorney, I'm going to have to own that. He said, wait a second. You're not going to admit that you guys failed those two values. That's going to cost you money in this mediation. I said, yes, I am, because it's the truth. We didn't do it on purpose. We're humans running this organization. We made mistakes. They weren't intentional, but we did make mistakes. So we have to own it. Cost us a little bit, but you know what? I slept at night.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing, to get a good night's sleep.
I've always wondered, have attorneys, HR, these types of people ever recommended, hey, we could talk about the values, but let's put the code of values aside. Let's not start every meeting with it. Let's not, because we're exposing ourselves to situations like the one you just described.
Yeah, I think that there are certainly attorneys, primarily outside attorneys, that we would hire to help with specialties that might encourage us not to spend a lot of time talking about the values. But you know what? When we sat down in those meetings with those attorneys, the first thing we would do is we would review our values. So we had to hold true to those. And you're gonna be attacked, and you're gonna make mistakes, and you're gonna have to own those, and it's gonna cost you sometimes. But you know what? It's just money. It's not your integrity. It's not your company's reputation. It's just money.
So over the last 30 years, the business has been astoundingly successful, and under your leadership, these values have thrived. How do you think the trajectory of the business would have been different without the code of values?
I don't believe we'd be where we are today, for a lot of reasons. Number one, we wouldn't have such clarity about who we are. And we wouldn't have retained great employees. We wouldn't have attracted and retained great franchisees. People are attracted to good, right? And they want to know what's expected of them. I remember my daughter interned at the company one summer. She did not work directly for me. She worked for one of our other brand presidents. And at the end of the summer, I asked her, I said, so what do you think about the values? I want your honest opinion. She said, Mom, don't ever get rid of them. She said, because the only few other jobs she had, she said, I didn't know what was expected of me. Here, I knew exactly what was expected of me, and it's nice to know what's expected, and I like being part of that. So, the values are just crucial to the success of the company, and they continue to be crucial. And I'm grateful that we have a leadership team at the organization that gets that. They get it, and the franchisees get it. And in fact, again, it's the reason certain private equity companies came to us, because our company has grown very rapidly over the past, call it 18, 20 years in particular, because of partnering with the right private equity groups. But they understood it too. In fact, at first they thought we were weirdos, right, from Waco. And what is this code of values stuff? This is weird. What are you guys drinking? And once they got engaged in the relationship, even in the courting phase of the relationship, they're like, wow, you guys aren't kidding. You really mean this stuff. And one of my highlights of my career is that two of those private equity groups actually then took their principles. One group had principles already, but they really took them to the next level. And the second group had no written values and actually began to work on them within 6 months of our relationship. When they understood just how important these were, they called us into their offices in New York and said, we want your help. Is this this is who we think we are. This is what we stand for. But did you experience this with us in the process of us acquiring you? It was beautiful.
There must have been the people over the years who, just wanted to do their job, not interested in the values, like you mentioned, thought you're crazy or that sort of thing. But now they're working in the business. What happens to people like that, or what has happened to people like that in the business over the years? Do they get converted, for want of a better word, or do they just realize this isn't a place for me?
Yeah, both. So some people get converted. Maybe they just do the sales job, right, when you're interviewing them, and they say, oh, yeah, I love these values, because it's part of the discussion, right,
Sure.
during the interview phase. So some people, fool us into believing that, yeah, they really are engaged with the values, and then you see their work ethic, and you quickly realize, and it's not so much that the leader has to realize that, it's their peers. And the beautiful thing about when you have clarity of your values, and in our case, making them a system, so every day we're reviewing the values. It's just not once a year whenever
Right.
we go over the strategic plan or we update it, and then it gets back on the shelf and nobody touches it again for 5 years. It's an everyday thing. And so a team member sitting beside another person in a cubicle that hears them using profanity on the line with a franchisee or a customer, hopefully will peek around after the call and go, hey, we beep each other. So that's kind of the verbal cue that you've just violated a value. It's just a simple beep. So today they might not be beeping as much, but hopefully they're going to have a conversation about, that is not in line with our values. That's going to hurt our reputation. And man, I don't want you doing that. So the other thing is people self-select out because they do get in. And when they realize that we mean it, we had a professional. We had somebody at a professional level in our organization when we first started implementing the systemized code of values. And we did play a game. Actually, it was called the Beep Game. So we were gamifying things way back when. And so we took the new values and we said, look, we need your help, team members. For the next 90 days, we're going to practice these values as a leadership team, but we haven't done this yet. So we need you to give us feedback. Anytime you catch one of us violating a value, just give us the verbal beep, right? And it was like the Roadrunner, if you remember the Roadrunner. It's like the Roadrunner was racing through our buildings. It was just beep, 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 right and left. One particular professional on our team happened to use profanity in the hallway while a mailroom clerk was walking by. Back in the old days, mail had to be delivered. People may not remember that, but so this mailroom clerk did what we asked her to do. She beeped the executive. The executive flips her off.
Wow.
It's like, oh God. Not only are you using profanity, which we're supposed to try not to do, and we're all going to make mistakes. None of us are perfect, but to go flip the team member off, you just don't do that. So the team member was brave enough to come to us, the leadership team, and said, look, here's what just happened. You asked me to do this. I did what you asked, and the lady flipped me off. So we counseled her. We didn't fire her. We said, look, we're all going to have a bad day. You can't have another bad day like that. We just can't go flipping employees off. When she realized, because we came back together as a group after that beep game, when she realized that the team was on board, she self-selected out of the company.
Wow.
Because it's not that she disliked the company, but she wasn't willing to play by those rules. No lower level employee was going to tell her what she should or shouldn't be doing or correct her. She just came from a different mindset, right? She had a different perspective. We're still friends today. She doesn't cuss around me. Now, I don't know if she does with anybody else, but the truth is, it was a great learning for us as an organization. But bringing the team back together and saying, what do you all think? Can we do this? Are we committed as a whole? Because everybody's not committed to this. 125 employees back at the time. It's not going to work. And they added the value, actually, Matthew, now that I think back. That was a long time ago. That was in the mid-90s. They added the value that we should never say anything about anyone that we would not say to him or her. That's hard. That's a Catholic thing, right? We should never say anything about anyone we would not say to him or her. And that's probably one of the toughest ones that we have on our list today.